Hi, this is Matt Donegan from Challenger Stories. I'm here with Simon. Simon's from Charity Challenge, which is an adventure travel company that specializes in raising money for charity. Simon, tell me about Charity Challenge.
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast, Matt. Charity Challenge is an adventure travel company. We get people outdoors, fresh air, nature, exercise, taking on a challenge. We do treks, bike rides, mountain climbs, and all of it is enabling people to raise money for a charity that they care about.
Okay. How long have you guys been going?
26 years. We just celebrated our 26th birthday. So just over a quarter of a century of doing this. And we've raised £91 million for thousands of different charities along the way.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. £91 million. 26 years. Some huge achievements there. Can you ask me what made you start the business in the first place?
Yeah, I travelled to Jordan. I saw an advert for a trek to Petra, one of the modern wonders of the world. And I took that on. I was in my early 20s at the time, raised a few £1,000s for charity. I had a great experience. And the next year they asked me if I wanted to climb Kilimanjaro, which I went and did. Tanzania, highest freestanding mountain in the world. I raised a few £1,000s. And then for the next couple of years, I voluntarily organised challenges, one to Tanzania, one to Cuba, for the same charity that I'd raised funds for. And they were very successful. And at the same time, I was a graduate trainee working in a big company, and I was talking to a business person and saying that I didn't want to work for a big company. I wanted to do my own thing, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And they gave me one really critical piece of advice, which is if you want to be successful, do something you're passionate about. And I'd traveled around the world. I'd raised money for charity. I'd met some great people, had some good experiences. And I thought if I could continue to do that and make it my own business, then potentially I was onto a good thing. And 26 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still traveling. And those few £1,000s have become 91 million.
4% of businesses reach 10 years. You've smashed that. Absolutely smashed it. How did you set a business up in the first place?
Believe me, if a small percentage make it to 10 years, I was one of those businesses that quite easily could have gone down. It was very difficult in the beginning. I was young enough that I moved out of my rented accommodation and moved in with my parents. And then a bit later, I moved in with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So I didn't pay any rent or bills or anything. So she invested in me and it paid off. But yeah, it was tough in the beginning. I was working non-stop. Obviously, you don't make money until you run a trip. And in the beginning, I was convincing people to do business with me, then organizing it. And often trips could take place anything from 9 months to 18 months down the line. So the beginning was very hard, really just getting through the initial period of developing a brand and a reputation and so on. I was young. I hadn't done this before apart from a couple of voluntary trips, but we did manage to get, NSPCC and British Heart Foundation and some big organizations to go with us to start with. And we've never looked back. We work with all the major charities, big and small. We work with the likes of Cancer Research and Marie Curie and Macmillan, but we work with hundreds and hundreds of small charities with no resources. So one of the key sort of points of difference when I set the business up was when I climbed Kilimanjaro, I had a girlfriend at the time whose mum had a rare form of cancer. But in order to do this trip, you had to raise money for the charity that was advertising the opportunity to come and do it. And she was like, well, why would I go and do that and raise money from all my friends and family when I could be doing it for a cause that I really care about? So when I set the business up, the concept was anyone could take part in any of our challenges and raise money for any charity. So you could have a husband and wife, brother and sister, work colleagues. They could each choose their own charity. Because when you, again, are passionate about what you are doing, you're more likely to sell it to other people. They're more likely to sponsor you. And you're more likely when you get to the minimum that you need to raise to keep going. So if you take on a holiday and you have to pay £2,000, you'll pay £2,000 and you'll stop there. You won't go above and beyond. But if you're raising money for a cause that you care about and people that know your connection to that cause, they will sponsor you more, you will raise more. And that was proof of the pudding. People raised a lot more. They were more caring and passionate about what they were doing, led to better experiences on the challenge. So that was the point of difference when we set the company up.
Yeah. See, that is a very significant point of difference. When I first heard about Charity Challenge and I looked into it, what didn't really occur to me was that you could have that kind of shopping list, if you like, of activities that you could take these incredible adventures and choose the destination, or choose the destination, but also choose a cause. I didn't realise they weren't necessarily linked. That's a brilliant idea. What made you come up with that concept?
It was mainly down to the fact that I couldn't get friends to come and join me on this trip because they just didn't have a belief in the cause that was advertising the opportunity. So it was like, well, look, there may be other people out there like me that would want to do this, but just needed a basis on which that they could really engage with it. And that's where it started from.
So what you do is you mix two kind of critical human factors. One is philanthropy, so doing something for good for a good cause with adventure, which that's absolutely fantastic. How many different adventures have you got going on at any one time or throughout the year?
In a busy period, we could have a dozen trips around the world all out at the same time. We run about 150 across the year. From the UK, we go to the North Pole, the South Pole, jungles, deserts, rivers, mountains, so all different types of environments. We do things from one day, obviously closer to home, up to 3 weeks, if you like, to the North Pole or to Everest Base Camp. So people can choose an activity: trek, bike, climb, raft, kayak, dog sled, ski. So there's lots of different activities. They can choose where they want to do that activity, when they want to go, and for how long. Some are more difficult than others. So we have 3 levels of difficulty: challenging, tough, and extreme. Extreme being the hardest. And that would be something in extreme heat or cold or altitude. So when you climb Kilimanjaro or to Everest Base Camp, you're going up above 3,000 meters, which is where the body starts to react to not having as much oxygen, if you like, at sea level. So it becomes much harder. So we do extreme challenges like that. We don't go to the summit of Everest. We don't, this is, our challenges are open to the majority of the public. They're accessible. They're very well supported. We have leaders and doctors and support vehicles and, a local support crew to help people do these challenges. So they're open to, if you like, in inverted commas, the average person. You need to train. You need to take it seriously. You need to have the right, clothing and equipment for the environment or for the weather. But it's open to most people. So you can choose, I want to push myself out my comfort zone. I'm going to be raising money for charity. I need to, if you're a triathlon, eventer, then taking on a lower level challenge doesn't, if people that know you do those things, doesn't really inspire them to sponsor you. But when you're climbing, the world's highest freestanding mountain and you've never camped before, people again get behind it and see that you're really pushing yourself out your comfort zone. So there's a whole range of things. What is challenging to one person could be a walk in the park for someone else, and vice versa. So we encourage people to look at what's involved, how many days, what are the facilities that you're doing without, when you're camping, it's pretty basic, and take on something that pushes you out your comfort zone.
And do you choose the kind of inventory that you have, the different activities? Have you got like a menu of them, or is that defined by the charities themselves? And how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a massive range of challenges, like I said, 150 across the year, and maybe half of those will be what we call open. Anyone can join, raise money for any charity, and there's stuff all around the world and all around the UK. The rest of the challenges we do are either charity or corporate. So we do a large part of what we do are corporate employees for a company, but raising money for their chosen charity. Or it would be a charity like the NSPCC saying, Simon or Charity Challenge, can you organise a trek on the Great Wall just for the NSPCC? And that date will only be for them to advertise to their supporters.
Yeah.
So we have a range of different options. But yes, there is essentially a shopping list of activities and destinations and times of year and difficulties, and people can choose what they want to do and when it's convenient to them.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, it's such a great concept. So you've defined a really powerful niche. You've got this business, 26 years, 91 million pounds. It's really admirable. Where are you going to take it next?
Well, the next big milestone is 100 million. Obviously, when I started, I was raising, £2,000-3,000 doing a trip myself. The first couple of trips we did, we raised about 50 to 70,000 pounds. So just reaching 1 million was obviously, I don't remember it, but it would have been a target. So now the next kind of milestone will be, I hope in the next 12 months, we'll hit 100 million. And that would be amazing. But there's a lot more we can do. And the business is changing direction slightly in that since COVID, I mentioned corporates. So probably 80% of the inquiries we have right now are from companies large and small. Their staff have been working remotely or hybrid working. So that's obviously a post-COVID, change in the way people operate. And companies realize that their staff are losing a connection to each other, to the business. And so by taking them out of their comfort zone, out of their normal working environment, it's not a workshop in the team training room or anything like that. It's real, it's genuine. They get them out, they do a challenge, outdoors, fresh air, nature, exercise. It's good for mental well-being as well as your physical well-being. And so that's been a large part of our growth. We're currently working with HSBC, Lloyds, Barclays, AXA, LV, Capital One, KPMG, EY. So lots and lots of large corporates. And again, lots of companies I'd never heard of before we started working with them. Finance industry, insurance, construction. So there's real benefits, as I mentioned, of getting your staff together, getting them connecting with nature. Just being out in fresh air gives you an opportunity to, to unwind, to disconnect. Lots of places we go to don't have phone connection, so you can't help but switch off and not worry about your emails or, keeping in touch and so on. And actually, the question you asked me was about where do we go next? We've just launched a new brand called Wellbeing in the Wilderness. And it's all about taking corporate employees on these challenges, but we've got a team of great mental health, mental well-being facilitators, and they just add an extra dimension of focus on nutrition, sleep, meditation, mindfulness, just a light touch. It's not, as I said, it's not a workshop in a training room or anything like that. It's just a light touch. But we've seen the experience that people come back from these challenges with organically. And so this is an added element of professional input, if you like, to make sure that people come back from these challenges, having had this amazing experience. And it's not just me. We've got 4.9 out of 5 on, Google reviews. People really do have phenomenal experiences. And it's about how do you take that experience and learning back into your life? But how do you, identify better with people, understand better, especially around the mental well-being, because everyone is on the scale somewhere or other with mental well-being, but there's lots more people talking about it and understanding how to support someone, how to encourage that conversation. So it's those kind of things. That's a new area of the business that we're developing right now.
You're incredibly passionate about what you do. When I look at business at the moment, 26 years, 91 million, you're looking at the next 9 million, you're racing towards that. That tells me you're in a scaling mode in the business to put on, that 9% or 10% of revenue from the entire time you've been trading and doing that short term. Are there challenges in scaling Charity Challenge?
So, it's incredible, but just thinking back 5 years, it obviously disrupted lots of things, probably none more so than international travel. Borders closed. So 1 minute I've got an office in London and a team of 17 staff, 7-figure overhead just to break even, and suddenly there's no income. Borders are closed, routes can't go. We've paid suppliers all around the world for trips that we can't deliver. And thankfully, all of our clients, without exception, hung on. We cancelled, we postponed, we rebooked. We had to cancel again because COVID was still there. And we went through this cycle for a couple of years where we couldn't operate any challenges. We developed the UK part of our business. So we had a small part, maybe 10, 15% of our business was UK. Suddenly it was 100% because we couldn't do any international travel. So the business, again, we had to pivot and change what we're doing. But COVID was a real moment where, again, we could have gone bust. Was 20 years into the life of the business. We could have gone bust. We managed to bunker down. We managed to keep staff on furlough. We gave up our office, which was a significant overhead. We had a business in Canada doing exactly the same thing, but for Canadian charities, Canadian participants, Canadian corporates, and raising money in Canadian dollars for Canadian charities. But essentially, it was the same business. We had to close that down. So actually, COVID was a real game changer for us in that we reduced our overheads significantly. Then when it did come back, we had a new part of our business in the UK, which is now about 40% of what we do. So it's significant. And the corporate business, again, post-COVID, because of people were remote working, then changed, again, the dynamic of where the business was going and what we were doing. So the last 5 years have been a dramatic shift. And we have changed. The international business is now back with a vengeance. We're doing lots and lots of international. Just a few weeks ago, I was out in the Indian Himalayas with HSBC. We had 2 groups back to back of well over 100 people trekking through the Himalayas and raising hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds for water aid in India. So it was a specific project in India. So it's well and truly back, but we've got a really good infrastructure. We've got a good team, a really good team of people, again, who are passionate. I share my values and the company values with any person that we interview, talk about it regularly. Because we all work remotely now, my staff are in Scotland and Yorkshire and Lake District and Cornwall, and I've got some that moved during COVID overseas. They're still employed, but we don't have a central office. So twice a year we get together just to be social, and we always go over the values again. So the team is a really good team that believe in what we're doing and are passionate about what we're doing, which is great. And passion is one of our core values. but it's great that they are. And we've got a good system in place. You know, we take thousands of people, 5,500 people every year around the world, but we've got a booking system. We've got an account area that supports participants. We support people with fitness training, fundraising, clothing and equipment. It's all automated. So we've got a really good system. So actually we can scale in the number of people. And we have since COVID, we've scaled. We've never taken as many people or raised as much money or run as many challenges as we are now, even though we downsized during COVID. So we've got a really good system in place. The key thing will just be that we've grown on our reputation. We've grown on repeat business. We've grown on referrals. And for me, it's not about the money at the end of the day. The first 20 years of the business up to COVID was really break even, make a little bit, lose a little bit, but it wasn't about the commercial nature of it. Since COVID, our overheads are down. The business has grown. As I said, we're doing more than we've ever done before, but I don't want to lose that reputation. I don't want to get things wrong. I don't want to, slip up for chasing that growth. So it's always a slow growth and a measured growth. But definitely I anticipate that the next, 2 years, we haven't really planned beyond that. We'll continue to see this growth pattern that we've got over the last 3 or 4 years.
Amazing. Quite an inspiring story, but because where it came from, we're doing something which has got a purpose, it's significant. I often talk to businesses about the vision, the mission, and the culture of the business, but it sounds like we've kind of got that aspect of it really nailed, because, of course, if you don't define what a culture is, you end up with one that perhaps you didn't want. If you don't define the vision and the mission is, then it's really hard to attract really good staff and really difficult to retain them. Your business is centered on vision and mission, literally. The mission of sending people away to generate income, revenue for charity. And to give someone a purpose and meaning and significance in life. It's very admirable, I've got to say. In terms of your plans moving forward, you've given us an idea about what the potential could hold. You've got the corporate sector, which is starting to flourish. You've recognised there's certain areas that you can really, really grow and engage the business. And you've talked about some of the challenges there. What would you have done differently if you had your time again with the business?
So the financial crisis impacts on people's ability to travel, to raise money, to ask other people to give them money. It affects corporates, whether they would put money behind these kind of things. So that, obviously COVID, but SARS, bird flu, terrorism, volcanic ash clouds from Iceland, all of these things affect us. Something happens in one part of the world. The last couple of years since October the 7th, Jordan was our #1 destination. And although it's safe to travel to Jordan and do the trek in Jordan, it's sandwiched between Israel and Iran. So it's been hard to sell the challenge. It's been hard to encourage people that it is safe to go to. So anything that happens in the world affects us. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is look at what's a volcano erupting, in Iceland, for example. These things are happening all the time, and that affects us. So yeah, we have no influence over those, but we have to be aware of them. And the biggest one probably was SARS. No, the biggest one was COVID, without a doubt. But the biggest one I can think of was SARS, where we'd actually organised one trek for 24 weeks across the Great Wall of China from the very beginning to the end. And a 2-women team were going to walk the whole thing. And each week was broken up into another group of 30 women raising money for breakthrough breast cancer. And 3 weeks into the trip, SARS happened and China kicked everyone out of the country. And every week we had 30 women that were due to go to China. And 1 week we had them going to Mexico and the next week to Tanzania. And we literally had to try and still deliver something that wasn't in China. So that was a massive undertaking. So there's nothing we can do about that, but it does impact on our business every day. What would I have done differently?
Yeah, exactly that. Imagine you've got these black swan events all the time, and we are impacted with them running a business. If I were to say there was a kind of steady state in business, and obviously in the industry that you're in, steady state can be, volatile at best. Yeah. What would you have done differently in running the business across the years? So I guess one of the things I'm saying here is what you've done when you pivoted is you showed real resilience. And that was just looking at a different area and focusing on a different area. If you've got your time again and you were to go back, would there have been anything that you would have done differently in developing the business model or the products or services that the company provides?
I would have done 2 things differently, and they're essentially the same thing. I would have listened to my non-executive directors, because for years they told me 2 things. One, I allowed the overheads to get out of control. When I made money, I put more money back into the business. I took on more people to support. I invested in the technology. So we never really made any money. So they often said to me, if you just got those overheads under control, the business would be more profitable. But I can't remember what the saying is, if you don't measure it, you don't achieve it. So I wasn't really focused on the money and I wasn't making money. But they said, get the overheads under control. The second thing is they said, Simon, you should be the salesperson. I employed a salesperson, a business development manager. And during COVID, I let that person go. I had no choice. So we downsized. And then I became the account manager and the salesman. And I've continued. So for 5 years now, I am the point person, if you like, for selling the business. And they always said to me, you should be the salesperson because it's you. You set the business up. You know everything. You take someone on, you need to tell them. And actually, since then is when we've made these pivots, when we've made the changes. And I've realized that actually I love selling the business. I love talking about the business, as you might gather from this, podcast. And I love the fact that at the moment I'm selling something that people really want. So to a company that they don't even need to have issues, but they just see the benefits of getting staff together outdoors again, all those things. It's an easy sell because we're selling something that has a real visual, tangible benefit to them, to their employees, to relationships. And obviously that's good for the business. So those are the two things I would have done differently. I would have been the salesperson it took 20 years. Well, I was probably the salesperson until I got big enough to want to take on a salesperson to do that role. But for the last 5 years, I've done it. And I absolutely, it's kept me passionate. It's kept me, I love obviously winning business and I love working with new clients. I now have a team of people that I can pass that over to. We have an account management team. I have an administrative team that help with contracts and building web pages, which I always used to do myself. And I do now have the overheads under control. Like I said, we downsized during COVID. We don't need an office. My staff are happier where they are with their families in whatever part of the country or the world they're in. Some staff travel and work remotely. It works as long as they can be in meetings on the time zone. They could be in Ireland or they could be in France or they could be in, one of my staff at the moment is in Dubai. So they work a little bit earlier than the office is up and there's a bit of an overlap, but it works. So those are the two things I would do differently.
Okay, great. That's a great insight there. And particularly in the sector that you're in, of course, the challenges are based on people moving around the world and doing these incredible things. It's culturally, I can see where you've got to in terms of having your staff working remotely, doing incredible things all around the world. Also, of course, what that allows you is it allows you to choose talent, not on location.
Exactly.
And that's kind of critical in your business as well. So I can see where the business is going to grow. I can see where you're moving it towards. Has there been anything that anybody that's inspired you along the way in that journey?
Two people to note. The person who said to me, if you want to do something to be passionate about, I've told him time and time again, that was a sentence that really stuck with me and essentially has changed my life because 26 years I've been doing that. My wife is a journalist and she interviewed me when I set up my first company, which was before Challenger Challenge, but also travel and charity. And she interviewed me for a local paper and the rest is history. We're now married. We have 3 sons. So that person was absolutely integral. And the other person was Jeremy Gain, who at the time was in his 40s. I was in my 20s. I'm now 53 and he's in his 70s. Thank you for saying that. But he was the guy who I climbed Kilimanjaro with. He organized it. And at the end of that trek, I said, I'm sure there are lots of people like me in my 20s who don't just want to go on a Club 18th and get so drunk that I wake up in my own vomit on the side of the street. That wasn't what I was into at the time. And he said, well, come on, put your money where your mouth is. Let's organize some trips. And so I went with him to Tanzania. We designed a trek with the Maasai. And then the following year, he paid me to lead it. He was the tour operator. This was when I was doing it voluntarily. And the next year we traveled together to Cuba and we designed a trek in the mountains where Fidel Castro held out before the revolution. And then he paid me the next year to lead it. So I was traveling, I was organizing, and then I was leading. And he was the inspiration behind that. He's an amazing man. He's climbed Kilimanjaro. I've lost track 23, 24 times. Even now in his 70s, he's climbing mountains. He's rock climbing, 3 or 4 times a week. He's an amazing guy. So he totally was my inspiration for the travel. But also, I remember at the time, All of his staff were paid well. He provided the clothing and equipment that they needed on Kilimanjaro. So lots and lots of companies take people, they don't have the right gear, it's freezing cold, it's high altitude. If they get sick, they get left to make their own way down. He did everything what I would consider right. You know, he's a grown-up hippie. He just believed in the right way of doing things, and he looked after people. So again, all of our charity challenges, responsible tourism practices, beliefs, all stem from Jeremy. So he would be my inspiration.
An incredible person to be able to and to have that the vision to provide people with those opportunities.
It seems obvious probably to you and me, and to hopefully lots of the listeners, but it's not something you can take for granted. Often companies pick up and drop people. They don't have value. They don't provide insurance or healthcare if they need it. We send doctors on our challenges, and our doctors will use the prescription medicines that we pay and send out on staff as much as they will on clients. If they need to go down, we'll send someone down. And it seems an obvious thing. It's just a human thing to do. But unfortunately, you often see, like on Everest, people just being left to die on the mountain because no one's going to care for them or take them down. You know, they're expendable. So that was, yeah, I mean, again, just to me, it seems a common sense thing, but it's not, unfortunately, in the industry.
There's a duty of care, isn't there? Absolutely. Are there any trips that you'd really love to put together for your clients, for the charities that you work with?
We're always putting new stuff together. Some of my staff are heading out to Montenegro next week. We've been researching stuff in Nicaragua and Mexico and a couple of different places. The truth is, the world's a big place. There are lots of places you can go to, but generally speaking, things like the Great Wall of China, Machu Picchu in Peru, Petra in Jordan, Everest Base Camp, Kilimanjaro, you know, these are bucket list challenges, and people do want those recognizable challenges. It's easier for charities to recruit people to do it or inspire employees to do it. It's easier for them to tell people, I'm going to Everest Base Camp or climbing Kilimanjaro, will you sponsor me? Whereas if we do something, you know, in a desert in Nicaragua, maybe people don't know where Nicaragua is. So we've had that before. We've had some amazing destinations, but if people just don't understand it, it's harder to sell, it's harder to raise money. So some of the more obvious modern wonders, or the Sahara Desert or the Grand Canyon, those kind of things are the main things. And we do all of those. Personally, I would love to go to Bhutan in Asia. I've never been there and would love to. We do trips to Patagonia. It's very expensive, and I've never been. I'd love to do that. And we do go to North Pole again. That's one that I would love to do, but it's the most expensive thing by a long shot that we do, because it's the frozen Arctic. So there's only 1 month of the year when the Arctic is frozen solid enough that you can actually land there, do the expedition, and then fly out again. It's, you know, very few people get to do it, and it's very expensive, but that's something I would love to do. But yeah, I mean, North Pole, South Pole, yeah, there are definitely countries that would be good to do, but none that jump to mind that we're not. You know, they're the key ones that we're doing right now.
Right. If I asked you about, say, 10 years' time, you would have been going for 36 years. What would you achieve? You're looking for that 100 million cumulative turnover in the next few years. What other signs of success are there? What would you have wanted to achieve if you were, in 10 years' time, sit back and we have this conversation, and I say, Simon, where have you gone to? What have you done with this business other than a revenue fee? Because revenue, great, wonderful, profit, wonderful, but actually you have a sense of purpose. You're not driven just by finances. You're driven by other intrinsic motivators rather than the extrinsic financial ones. Tell me, what's Charity Challenge done in the next 10 years?
1 year ago, we celebrated our 25th birthday, and I put out a thank you to people that have been involved with the business. And I cannot tell you how many responses I had from staff that have worked for the business who came back and talked about the impact it's had on them and their life. I've got leaders that have worked for me for, 20 years. I've got staff within the business. There's only 17 staff in the business, but I've got some that have worked for me for 16 years, 17 years, 20 years. So for me, a sign of success is all of these people reaching out and saying, A, congratulations, but B, I'm paraphrasing, but I love my time at Charity Challenge, or I still look back on, fondly with what we did together and what we achieved and those kind of things. So yeah, I don't know whether it answers your question to say just more of that, but it's not about the money. Obviously, raising more money is it, but 80 million, 90 million, 100 million, 120 million, it's quite hard to see the difference. But if we can impact on more people, more lives, people have taken their dad's ashes to to tip out at Everest Base Camp where they're raising money. People are really impacted, by these challenges. One of our biggest charities is Copperfield. It's a breast cancer charity. In fact, I'm going to Iceland with them in a couple of weeks' time. But a large proportion of the people that take part are women that have had breast cancer, or that are connected to someone who has. The passion and the emotions and the last day finishing the trek and the celebrating, you get a medal, and the hugging and the tears, and like, for me, that's a sign of success. So again, I don't know how you quantify more of that, but just seeing the impact of what we do is, for me, is a sign of success. At the end of each year, I'm asked by our marketing team to write a blog. And when I look back, it's always like, this year we've raised £5 million. We've helped this many charities. We've taken tens of 7,000 people on challenges. We've been to this place and this place. And, it's that kind of just sort of looking back with pride at what we've done. That might sound arrogant, but at the end of the year, just to see what impacts we've had. The actual P&L is the last thing that we necessarily look at. On a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, we have meetings. It's about what trips have come back, what feedback have we got, what can we learn from that, what we can do better, and so on. Obviously, we need to pay the bills, but once that's in control, it's more around just getting things right.
So that's really interesting, because it sounds like one of your company KPIs, one of the business KPIs, is lives positively affected, which is unusual. It's just not. You have that inside not-for-profits, and even not-for-profits. Sometimes the KPIs inside those organisations can be a little bit woolly. I've been involved with a couple of very large not-for-profits, and sometimes you found it hard to distinguish what success looked like. You as a business have a couple of different. There are two major components. You've got the commercial success of the business, and then you've got the success in terms of the positivity that you're given all these different lines. Do you count those on an annual basis? Is that one of your company KPIs?
We don't. So the money that gets raised goes to the charity. So we know what the minimum is that people are asked to raise, but we don't really know how much above and beyond that people go. What we say is, and you can't see it, but around the office, we've got words on the wall. So we've got all of our values, and we've got phrases like, we're providing shelter to the homeless, food to the hungry, finding a cure for cancer. So I can't say that if they find a cure to cancer, that was down to us, but the funds that we raise are all going to these incredible causes, fighting climate change, helping the elderly, or education for people. So the money that's raised is one, and then in the countries we go to, we employ people. We take on local service providers, so the money benefits those. So again, yes, it's lives impacted, but we don't really. I couldn't say how much has gone to cancer and what that charity's done with it. As you say, it's quite hard for those charities themselves to specify. But we know that we only do challenges. Our business only functions where people raise money for charity. So at the end of each trip, we know that there has been an impact both on the funds that they've raised for the causes that they've raised for, but also in the locations that we've been to.
It's not often that I come across a business that is so purpose-driven. I often come across businesses that have got mission and vision baked into what they do, but it's about being the market leader, or about topping the market leader, or about the number of the revenue it's going to generate and the profits it's going to generate. It's very unusual to come across a commercial entity that is so purpose-driven, that has got that heart baked into the culture. Does that make it easier to recruit?
Short answer, yes. It's humbling to hear you say that, because to me, it doesn't feel like we're doing things differently, but I've only ever had one company. I've only ever had Charity Challenge. I was a graduate trainee when I started, so I didn't know about insurance and law and admin. I've had to learn all those things along the way. I often tell my own staff, like, I'm not an expert. I've taught myself all of these things or picked things up along the way. And I always try and employ people who are better than me in the area that I'm taking them on. I'm well aware that I have my shortcomings and that there are people that are better in different areas than me. But the short answer is yes, it is easy to recruit, because, as I said, we do talk about our vision and our values, and I want people that believe in those things. If my own values were different to that of the business, you could see through it. Employees could see through it. And I think that because the business was essentially started in my 20s, it's my whole life. It has been, my wife met me at the start of the business. My kids have been born, and I teach them the same values. So it is integral. I'd like to think that the staff believe it's genuine and it's not just, as you say, we need a vision, we need values, we need mission and so on. So a number of the employees have left industry. They've left well-paid jobs, and we're not the best charity and travel are both industries that are not the best payers. So they've taken pay cuts to come and work. But you'd have to ask them. I'm fairly confident they would say that what they've got or what they haven't got in salary, they've got in flexibility, they've got in pride, they've got in job satisfaction, and all of my staff have opportunity to travel and actually see, because every week when we have a team meeting, we share the feedback that we've got. But actually going on a trip, like I said, seeing the tears and the hugging and the people hanging on to their medals with pride when they've done something, for me, it's like 6 months of therapy. It really makes it just helps. It just helps know that what you're doing is worthwhile. So I think the staff as well, when they get out and see those things, or at least hear the feedback, they can see what their job is doing. So I'd like to think that there's a high level of job satisfaction, although I haven't measured it, just anecdotally.
I think it's fascinating because having so much purpose built into a business, as I say, is quite unusual, and very admirable. Simon, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fascinating speaking to someone who 26 years, 91 million pounds, heading for 100 million. Putting aside those figures, I mean, the 26 years is quite a fantastic figure, as is the 91 million. But putting those things aside, the number of lives that have been positively affected, the number of incredible experiences that you have given and you are continuing to give. So not only the people that take up those challenges, but also the positive impact to the charities that are generating income from it. Not only is it fascinating, but I doff my cap to it, Simon, because it's an incredible achievement. You should be very proud. So you should be. Simon, thank you very much for your time today. Really, really appreciated it. I look forward to finding out, well, speaking with you when you.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate your time.
Excellent.